Happy holidays, everybody. This is chapter 12, like the 12 days of Christmas, the final episode, the final chapter in our 12-part series. I'm here as usual with Mark. Hey, Mark, how are you today?
Doing great. Excited for this conversation too.
Good. This is an interesting one because the previous 11 chapters have been a slow build up to really the end game for any enterprise, whether B2B or B2C, is how do you find that perfect customer, but not only find that perfect customer, but also engage them, retain them, cross-sell them, upsell them, all that type of stuff. When we look at our previous chapters, just a quick summary, I'm going to cheat a little bit and read from some notes for a second. But chapter 1 was all about first-party data and the key to engagement and really monitoring intention. Chapter 2 was all about, the nitty-gritty of data munging, data wrangling, 80% of what data scientists do, to really get at the heart of, accessing, normalizing, and syndicating data for the enterprise. You maybe call it democratization. Chapter 3 was all about the synthetic CDP. How do you serve up granular insights at scale, which is really important. Chapter 4, one of my favorites, was the map trap, marketing automation mistakes. Chapter 5, we talked about CMS personalization at scale through sensors, a very, very important area and an area where very few enterprises actually nail this. Chapter 6, we talk about account-based marketing versus customer-based marketing, the whole art versus science, and determining sentiment and how important that is. Chapter 7, orchestration and not sophistication is the key when we talk about process orchestration and how, again, that's sometimes overlooked. Chapter 8, depth at scale, the importance of natural language processing, ML, AI, nano campaigns, time and motion, all that good stuff, kind of bring it all together. Chapter 9, contextual analytics, very important as well for this particular chapter, basically serving up the right information to the right person at the right time, and sometimes bypassing traditional methods. Chapter 10, what AI can do for you, and some of the, helping you understand exactly what fake AI is out there and how you can overcome that with a virtual data scientist team. Chapter 11 was all about atomized decisions in real time, i.e. in the moment decision support. And here we are, chapter 12. So from that big dump mark of all those 11 chapters, which ones do you think are the most important to this topic today? Finding the perfect customer and retaining that perfect customer.
It's wow, it's a lot of stuff. I think we've had a lot of good conversations around this, and also just based on the feedback that we've gotten from these things. I'm not sure, what would be the favorite to everybody, but I think the personal ones that we got into were very interesting were around AI and ABM versus CBM. Certainly the data wrangling component. I think all of them have a place in in the top 11, as it were. But yeah, I'd say those would probably be the top 3 that I think were pretty interesting to a lot of people.
Good. Well, as usual, let's not waste any more time and let's jump into the heart of this topic today.
Yeah, let's get at it.
Finding the perfect customer. So before I jump into the actual problem statement, I always like to think of DACE, first of all, the importance of driving interest, driving awareness, driving traffic. It all begins with driving something within the business. And A, as you know from previous 11 chapters, I like my acronyms. A is to automate as much as possible. We are in a world today where there's simply so much data and information that without automation, you're toast. There's no way a human can deal with it all without making proper decisions. C is, of course, to convert. Very important. What's the point in getting a lot of potential customers excited without being able to convert them? And E is engagement. Engagement is critical for retention, for upselling, cross-selling, that type of stuff. So that's one of my acronyms. RFM, the most classic acronym that everybody knows: recency, frequency, and monetary value. This one became very well known to me way back in the day, working with a firm called Nordstrom. I hope it's okay to mention their name. If not, we can block it out. But what blew me away is 90% of their bottom line profit came from their top 5% of customers. And those customers are shopped recently, always, with great frequency, once or twice a week, with absolute regularity, and dropped a lot of money when they went to the stores. The other thing as well that I think is very important for us to touch on today is kind of known unknowns and how automation and technology and AI can help us discover them, and also unknown unknowns. So for example, even that example of that 5% of top customers drive 90% of bottom line profit. that might be an unknown unknown to some extent. And I'm open to debating with you. So finding the perfect customer goes way beyond just profiling. It's understanding exactly where they are at a very specific point in time regarding, as you say, their mood. And this requires a lot of data. To do that requires a lot of synthesis of a lot of data, personal, psychographic, histographic, demographic data, and so on, all in real time. To crunch that is an immense challenge, hence some of the previous chapters. We encourage you, if you haven't already seen them, check on them. But the real challenge is understanding, what that intent is at that moment in time, so you can engage appropriately with the right campaign, the right message, the right action, the right service. So again, Mark, dumped a lot on you there.
Yeah.
Anything you would add, anything you would focus on or stress, or where the real challenges are today within the enterprise?
I mean, I think I probably would start with an analogy just to scope it out, which is that, it's sometimes when you know somebody really, really well, whether it's a spouse, a child, a parent, a friend, or whatever, that's hard enough to figure out, what they're likely going to do next or how they're feeling. The case we're talking about here now is kind of people that are familiar to one another, at least reputationally, and trying to understand what it is that they need to work with each other in order to have a conversation or have an exchange of some kind. And how that is done is, as you say, with a massive amount of data. And that data is out there, and you can also build it, create it, and invert and defert and so on from what you have. So the point of that is, it is ultimately about understanding sentiment, and then kind of matching that up with intent, and really kind of what your outcomes are in the negotiation of your conversation.
So let's go one level deeper. Why it's so important. This phrase here is finding and identifying the perfect customer is the optimal use of resources or energy within an organization. That's one thing that's pretty obvious. Chasing the wrong opportunities is a terrible waste of time and energy and resources, which are very scarce in any enterprise. But turning that around, what is the impression that a customer gets if you understand them at every point in their whole life cycle? Obviously, they become nearly part of the enterprise becomes nearly part of their lives because you know them so well. Would you like to talk a little bit about that and why that's so important?
Yeah, I mean, why it's important is just there's so many facets to that, but I think ultimately it's you just zeroed in on it. It's that uh, you care, right? You care about what happens, and you understand what's going on. I know with inside of our own organization, when we engage with somebody individually or as an organization, we spend a heck of a lot of time really understanding like kind of why they turn the wheel every day to create value in this world, and what it is they're doing, not just on an individual level, but how does that relate to the overall organization. And so I think the message that comes back from that is that you really do care, you're vested, you want to see them successful. And I think even just from as the an operator inside of our business at times, we do think about, are we over focusing on an audience that's too large, right? Are we focusing in on just the right people individually and as an organization, so that they understand that we get what it is they're doing and understand what their mission is, and that we're also vested with them. So I think those are the kind of the reasons that why this is so important. It's about narrowing focus. It's about aligning resources to that. It's also just about making sure that you can serve in the way that somebody needs it.
Do you have an example from working with customers where you've done such deep analysis, where you've actually come back to them and you've surprised them or delighted them in some way by something you've discovered?
I would say probably with every one of them, it's in some capacity, where we get into it, and we just come back, and it's like, did you know this was going on in your business, or and this was going on inside of your organization, and not as a challenge, and not as a way to kind of hold a mirror up in their face and say, hey, you really suck at this. It's really about, hey, here's an insight that is probably intuitively not obvious to anyone who's working inside of your organization right now, that we've been able to uncover just by the way we're working through something. And so pretty much every one of our, customers, we're able to, bring that kind of value to them. And, but I mean, here's how we do it. And some of it is just like, maybe we're, showing the AI technology, right? Or the predictive stuff, or, who's going to become a customer. And so we'll say, hey, by the way, did you know that these 10 or 12 customers are showing a propensity to convert in the next 96 hours at like the 90 percentile rate? You may want to call, right? You may want to reach out to them or something, rather than just, putting them into a next step of an automation campaign and potentially losing them and so forth.
So those things, those findings that you find with those customers, would you categorize them as known unknowns or unknown unknowns, or a combination?
At first, they'd be unknown knowns, right? I'd say, and then there's also other ones where we get into where they'd be unknown unknowns. And an example of that would be, we have a customer that does a lot of kind of how do you say it, like service desk analysis, right? And so, and we basically said, hey, by the way, did you know that there's a correlation in between every time somebody opens up a support or service test issue or ticket, that it actually spawns 134 different tasks that are associated with that. And that's usually because it's distributed across a lot of things, right? And so when you start surfacing these things up together, that's you start having a deeper conversation with somebody about either how to transform their business, or kind of get deeper into it, or understanding ways of working better. Right.
And believe it or not, there is actually a squirrel at my feet. I should really shine the camera down, because that's too funny. It's good to be out during the depths of winter in California. Anyway, let's. Can you walk us through the PIF process?
The PIF process in this is, it starts with the foundation, right, which is certainly around data access. But it's the kind of data we're accessing here. It's not just transactional data. It's also the psychographic data, the histographic data, and so forth. Now, it's not just about access. This is where the real value comes in. And this is what I think is going to define the way I think many organizations are going to exhibit their value, let's just call it that, in the future. And that's really with the type of algorithm that they're using in order to synthesize their view of what that customer is. So inside Put It Forward, what we do is we certainly have an algorithm container, but we also have the mechanism for an individual to work with that. Whether they are a coder or a business person, they can go in and start manipulating that and driving an outcome that they may be looking for in the most efficient and meaningful way possible. So they map all that data into the algorithm. The algorithm does its thing, and then it starts to either trigger events or responses or outcomes on that. And those are used to drive the outcome that you may be looking for. And of course, well, that's just one other thing I'll say. We also surface that data inside of, at point in time, conversations that somebody may be having with somebody, or we use it to drive another, automated process inside the enterprise.
So basically, the key results from all of this is a 24/7 health check of your customers and prospects and partners. That means basically, from my interpretation, you have tabs on all of your customers and prospects and partners anytime, and that can alert you to, as we see here, new revenue opportunities at risk or revenue at risk scenarios, or changes in sentiment, or other types of opportunities or dangers in the business. Can you double click into that a little bit for us?
Sure. I think also another way maybe to summarize that up is, and I don't want to be clinical about this, but you can almost sort of see like the net present value of your interaction with a customer or partner or prospect at any one moment in time, and what you have to do to actually move that needle. That's really the magic that's behind, or is the magic that's the outcome of this.
So, key takeaways from all of this: the perfect customer is more than just a new customer. It's everything during the whole pre-customer stage, prospect stage, customer life cycle, etc. Your alignment to the customer is more than just one-to-one, it's many-to-many because of everything that goes into all of this. And engagement data is absolutely critical, not just the history, but external data that illuminates exactly what sentiment is at any given point in time. Of these three, can you bring us through a life case of a customer you've worked with where these have been important, and which element was the most important takeaway from all three?
I'd say the most important one that I'd say is surfaces the most often rather is the many to many relationship. And I don't want to zero in on one particular customer because I think it affects many of them. But here's the scenario that is surfacing in, frankly, just 2 times this week, even though it's a holiday week, is how do you identify what is contributing to the ABM success when you have a many to many relationship in between a contact, an opportunity, and account, right? And so the scenario, to be more granular, is that you have your ABM technology and your solutions or whatever, and so you're marketing at various particular accounts. However, it surfaces up multiple different opportunities, right? Which is great. But then you also have same or related contacts being associated to multiple different opportunities in that singular account. So which one do you actually attribute your value to or your outcome towards, right? Which one actually of these activities is going to drive the rest of these things over the line, and which one started it so you can repeat and do that more. That is, I'd say, is probably the most common and pertinent theme that we see these days, at least in recent activity. Certainly the engagement data is absolutely critical to funneling all of these things and driving that, because that's the main fuel, right? That's just the data is the fuel in terms of how you're going to drive your decisions, and that's the raw material and raw fuel that goes into that. And also, just add on the first one here, the perfect customer is more than just the new customer, right? Hey, we all know that we can work really hard to get a new customer on board, and they seem awesome, and you go through the whole onboarding exercise, and then at some point something happens where you're like, hey, this maybe is not the ideal scenario. Maybe going back to your Nordstrom example, right? 95% of the people going through the door, they're great for volume and moving, things off the racks, but they're maybe not the most profitable customer or the ideal customer to have. Are they any less important? No. Are they the perfect customer for your business? Maybe not. I think it kind of, it comes down to, finding and understanding really what problem it is that you're trying to solve for, and aligning that directly with the audience that you have. And maybe that audience is smaller than you want, but that is what, you need to focus on.
Very good. And just to go back to your many to many, that's something in the past that I used to refer to as connective tissue, basically mapping out the interdependencies of everything and how that drives towards a common goal. But keeping tabs on all of the connective tissue within the enterprise can be extremely difficult. Can you relate to that?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's the butterfly effect, right? In kind of real terms. And so, if you wanted to be abstract about it, you could say this is an application of, formerly known as chaos theory, right? Or, its various incarnations since then. And I think it's not about being connected to everything at every one moment in time. It's about understanding where to get the signals from in order to be able to derive value or derive intent from those signals. And that's probably the really important part of that. So it's pointed connectivity. It's deeper certainly than before. It's about having kind of sensors and connections into a lot of different things, but also being able to surface up that signal and in a way that you can interpret it in a meaningful way, rather at a moment in time, so you can take an action, right? Do something important.
And as we are finished, of course, the leaf blowers begin. So one difficult. There it goes. Anyway, Mark, thank you so much for that. I think that was a great session. Or kind of like our 12 days of Christmas, the final session, final chapter. But undoubtedly we'll be doing more, maybe similar type of things. We'll reach out to customers, prospects, viewers, anybody's interested, please write some comments below of something you'd like to see, or if you need us to double click into any of these areas that we've covered over the previous 12 chapters. But once again, Mark, big thank you for all your time. in putting these together, and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, my pleasure, Jim. And this has been just a great exploration. And these 12 were just a lot of fun, to be honest.
Exactly.
There's a lot of good work that went into this too, and really good outcomes. So thank you very much for your time and attention.
Got to think up some new ideas for 2021. It's going to be a radical year with a lot of change, a lot more accelerated change, a lot more digitization, a lot more disruption, and a lot of what we covered in those previous chapters will be very much required in 2021 and beyond. So look forward to the future. It's going to be good.
You're right. Likewise. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Happy New Year too.